Napa know-how.
It takes a lot to get excited about a bag, but most bags can't save you 20% on parts and accessories. That's 20% off brake pads, 20% off oil filters, 20% off virtually anything you can fit inside the 99-cent Napa reusable bag. So tell your buddies there's a bag they just have to check out. Quality parts, helpful people. That's Napa know-how.
Napa know-how.
At participating Napa Auto Parts stores while supplies last. Minimum 3 items. Exclusions apply. Offer ends 10/31/18.
TCL is a proud sponsor of the 1500 ESPN studios. TCL, America's fastest growing TV brand. Minnesota Vikings, the NFL, football. Yeah, football. Welcome to Purple Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of the Purple Podcast. Matthew Collar here with former NFL quarterback Sage Rosenfels. Sage, how are you?
I'm doing great. Good morning.
I want to start out with you not on a Minnesota Vikings topic, but on our new greatest passer of all time by the passer yards statistic, and that is Drew Brees. And last night, magical evening to watch as he lit up the Washington defense. Tell me what you see when you watch Drew Brees, and I guess, from when you look at his career, where he fits in, because it's impossible to not, for me, put him among that list of guys who are the all-time legends and greats.
Yeah, I mean, he's up there. A lot of times people don't put him, in the Tom Brady category, or in the top 5 category. I'm not sure where he is, but if you want to talk about having every aspect of the quarterback position, completely covered and covered at a really, really high level, except for height and arm strength. Those two things are the two things that Drew Brees does not have. The rest of what he has is everything you'd ever want in a franchise quarterback. And so he has had, he and I came out the same year, 2001. He's had just a fantastic career. He just oozes what I call the it of what you're looking for, sort of the competitive spirit, the grit, just the mentality of, next play, how do I get an edge? How do I get an advantage this offseason? How do I get better at something that maybe I wasn't as good at before? His arm never got stronger. He never got taller, but his decision making, his accuracy, and his competitive drive and spirit to win each and every week, has, really carried that organization for the last dozen years.
Yeah, I asked him last year before the Minneapolis Miracle game on a conference call just about how his height had impacted him in a positive way throughout his career. And he said that it had been a driving factor, that it put a chip on his shoulder, and he knew that he had to work harder. And from even the very beginning of not being a first-round pick and dropping to the second round despite his ridiculous college career, that he has carried that with him even through today. And that's what amazes me, Sage, about some of the great quarterbacks is that he is 39 years old. The guy has accomplished so much in the NFL, and yet he seems like he never stops being driven to improve and succeed. It's incredible.
Yeah, and I don't see that slowing down anytime soon. I was in that locker room after the Minneapolis Miracle last year. I said I've known Drew now for, 19 years or something like that. We were 22, 23-year-olds when we first met, I believe, at the Combine. And just the way he still is, he still has that wanting to accomplish more, to win another Super Bowl. He's ripped to shreds. I mean, the workouts that he does in the off season, that he has always truly done in the off season. He's out in San Diego. He has this guy named Todd Durkin that he has been always worked out with. And Drew is just ripped to shreds as basically a 40-year-old man. It's really incredible. The work he has put into his body, the work he has put into to his career, to that organization. It's incredible. And I do think height, sometimes there is a law of diminishing returns. And I'm a 6'4" and a half guy. I do think there's this aspect of, the really tall quarterbacks. It can be actually harder, I think, in today's game. You need more space in the pocket where you're just not going to have it. I mean, how many throws do we see Kirk Cousins throwing with a guy right in his face? Mm-hmm. Imagine being 6'6" and needing even more space for your wingspan, and for your frame. As a smaller guy, Brees can fit into smaller holes. He can maneuver around the pocket. He's got a lower center of gravity. His athleticism is something that's not talked about. He is a phenomenal athlete. Just the way he moves around and scrambles and buys time. He's always been good at he's one of those guys who's always good at whatever he tried. Baseball, he was a great player. He was a good basketball player. And he's a Hall of Fame quarterback.
So I'm looking at his numbers for his career, and they're exactly what you want to see when you call up like the greatest ever. In Pro Football Reference and Baseball Reference, they use bold for when a guy led the league. And if you look at Barry Bonds' Baseball Reference, it's just all bold. And the same thing is for Drew Brees. I mean, year after year of 5,000-yard passing seasons, even when his teams weren't playing from behind, MVP caliber seasons. I don't think he's ever won an MVP, which is super weird, considering how many times he's led the league in different categories. And then even his playoff numbers. I mean, he's got a 7-6 record in the playoffs, so maybe he doesn't get the same sort of cachet as Tom Brady for winning all the time. And of course, he didn't have a Belichick defense, but 100 quarterback rating, 29 touchdowns, 9 picks for his playoff career. He's done everything that you think of when you think greatest quarterbacks of all time. And if he isn't put in that same category by some people, then I think that they're just ignoring a lot of facts here because he's way up there. And maybe it is, I saw it brought up that maybe it is because he's a smaller guy or something, or he isn't, I don't know, he doesn't have the look of some of the other all-time great quarterbacks like an Elway or, I don't know why anyone wouldn't put him in that category, but I think he's there. So
there's something about, physical stature and sort of the imposing quarterback look that people seem to, give extra, credit to. And like Troy Aikman was a great, great quarterback, but numbers wise, Ryan Fitzpatrick has a lot more touchdown passes than Troy Aikman in their careers. But when Troy was on the 1 and 2 yard line, they weren't throwing the ball. They were handing it off to Emmett 3 times. I mean, it was a different game back then completely, and in particular on that football team. So, but some people might have Troy Aikman as one of the greatest of all time, but stats wise, he's not. And, Brees and Sean Payton, when he went there to New Orleans instead of going to Miami and that relationship started, that has really been another sort of key aspect of this whole thing that, deserves a lot of credit. And, to have a quarterback and an offensive coordinator, a quarterback and a head coach who's really the offensive coordinator, working together for a decade is a huge advantage for an offensive football team. It's a huge advantage for that quarterback. These two guys are constantly on the same page. They think about the game the same. It's like they only probably know like the same language. Mm-hmm. I'm sure Brees knows what's the next call or two on Sean Payton's sheet just because they probably think alike at this point. They've had the same Pete Carmichael, who's their, I would assume, offensive coordinator. He's been there the entire time as well. They've had, 3 minds in that room. They're constantly on the same page. When the Saints aren't good, it's when their defense just happens to be really crappy that year and ranked 28th in the league, and they end up going 8-8 and Brees throws for 5,000 yards. When the defense is just average, they end up being a 11 or 12 win team and generally in the playoffs. And so their just level of consistency, in particular on offense, has been phenomenal for the last decade. And there's been some years where the Saints had a couple bad years, and maybe this is the year Sean Payton gets fired. But at the end of the day, Sean Payton he's a great offensive mind, and so they always kept Sean Payton on because their biggest 2 weapons were basically Sean Payton's offensive mind and Drew Brees' arm, and so that made a lot of hay over there down there in New Orleans, and I said it'll be a first ballot Hall of Fame career for Drew Brees, and it's well earned.
You got to wonder if they had any defense from 2014 to 2016, if he would have won another Super Bowl. And, it's something I think about with the win-loss records of quarterbacks, because in a lot of ways, the quarterback can't control the win-loss record. I mean, when Drew Brees throws for 5,200 yards and he's got great stats situationally and everything, he's got the good QBR, which takes into account, how you get your team ahead and all that, but he comes away with 7 wins, you're like, man, that's really tough. But at the same time, the guy is 146 and 107, and all the great quarterbacks just win. So I tend to still look at a quarterback's win-loss record when you get to the end of the day, the end of their career, and trying to figure out how good they were.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome, too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Breeze has, been one of those guys where he truly has sort of carried that football team and that franchise, and he really does set the bar, for that organization. I believe Kirk Cousins is trying to do that, trying to sort of, this is my team, this is my squad, let's go do this thing. He wants to win Super Bowl as well, and everyone's sort of match that intensity and try to match that professionalism, that consistency, that competitive drive every day. I think Cousins is trying to do that, and I'm sure Breeze is one of the guys he's sort of emulating his career after, and a guy that he wants to be, very similar to, hopefully win a Super Bowl. So, unbelievable for guys, 6 foot tall, barely 6 foot tall. Here's my Drew Brees story at the combine. We come out there, and they do your heights one of these mornings, and I walk up there and they say, 6'04" or something like that. I think 6'4" and 3/8 was my height. Breeze gets up there, they go 5'1" or something. He's 5'11" and like 9/10 or something, and he goes, no, measure it again, and the guy goes 6'0". He got a second measurement to get to 6 foot.
He went to the replay tape.
Yep, fell to the second round and had Norv Turner as his rookie offensive coordinator. LaDainian Tomlinson, how about that draft by the San Diego Chargers? LaDainian Tomlinson with I believe the 5th pick in that draft, and Drew Brees with the 1st pick of the second round. Not a bad draft for the San Diego Chargers in 2001.
So I pulled up your NFL Combine results. You ran a pretty good 40, 4.74. That was
not bad.
Yeah, you know what you can do with technology is you can look at the percentile in which you rank among your peers. So you were a 70th percentile runner, 89th percentile height. Very good height by you. And
yeah, thank you. It's just hard work.
Yeah, great work.
Job.
Yeah. If you want to thank everyone for that, I guess your parents. Vertical jump 34 inches. Are you good at basketball?
I was in the day. I actually tried to. I was at my daughter's basketball practice the other day, and they were down the other court. I tried to go up and dunk, and I about blew out my left knee when I went off the ground. So I think those dunking days are done.
Maybe not so much 34-inch vertical anymore, huh?
Not anymore. It's pretty interesting. As soon as my college season was over, you got about 2 months to the combine, and I was literally like training for a track meet. I was not trained to be a football player at all. So I just trained to increase, and maximize these numbers. And you did certain lifts and certain exercises and everything so we spent a lot of time trying to get that vertical leap up.
Do you know what Randy Moss's vertical was?
Oh, 42.
47 at his pro day. 47.
And he's so long. Incredible.
That's right. So he's the same height as you and has a 47. That's why all of his quarterbacks could just launch the ball up. And so even when
give Randy a chance.
I mean, that's the thing is that even when guys moss cornerbacks now, I've never heard of a guy jumping 47 inches. So anyway, you bring up Kirk Cousins and his or at least Drew Brees' relationship with Sean Payton. Now Kirk Cousins, it seems, is getting on the same page with John DeFilippo because, Sage, I was really impressed by what I saw from DeFilippo in Philadelphia. They knew that they weren't going to be able to run the ball. They knew they were going to be under pressure right away, and Kirk Cousins certainly was in that game, but found a way to establish a short passing game that moved them up and down the field. And I thought DeFilippo had a great day in Philly.
Yeah, I thought that was his best job of the year, and Cousins played fantastic in this game, and he got hit a lot in this game as well. You can tell the Vikings are trying to run the ball. They would like to run the ball. But what I thought was a nice comment in the telecast, I believe Aikman said it, I'm not going to sit here and hit my head against the wall going against one of the best rush defenses in the league with an offense right now that's not a great rush offense. And so they were going to throw the ball that game. I loved how they mixed up the short passing game. They run a lot of naked bootlegs in this offense with guys slide underneath, whether it's Stephon Diggs or a running back or another tight end. They do that's sort of their way of trying to throw the ball down the field. It's they don't drop back a ton and just launch it down the field. It's usually a lot of the bootleg stuff. Try to get Kirk out of the pocket, move the pocket. See if he can set his feet and double move or throw the ball a little bit deeper down the field. So they do a nice job with the zone, with the play action. And then Kirk, you could just tell he's got a really strong arm. I mean, and I said, I loved everything Case did last year. It's very apparent the difference in that arm strength between Case Keenum and Kirk Cousins.
I ran across a funny stat about Case Keenum, by the way, because he isn't performing at the same level, which we all kind of predicted that he would drop back. But they are not using anywhere near the level of play action in Denver that Pat Shurmur dialed up last year for Case Keenum. And that was what really helped his success, was executing on a lot of those play action plays. And I mean, that to me is just incredible that Denver would see everything he did, give him $20 million a year to go play there, and then not use him the same way he was used in Minnesota.
Yeah, and that's just, it's up to the offensive coordinator to design his offense around his players and how much, how does the coordinator think and what's important to him versus what his quarterback is best at. And I remember, it was probably the third or fourth game when Keenum was starting last year, and he was sort of seemed like he was going to be the guy the rest of the year. He was playing so well, and I was interviewing him at a press conference, and I brought up, and they ran so many naked bootleg type plays in Shurmur's offense. It was zone and then zone play action nakeds off of it. And I said, how much did it help? Early in his career, he was a Texan, Gary Kubiak, Kyle Shanahan, zone play action quarterback. And so that's sort of the basis of who he is and the basis of how he was taught, his first 3 or 4 years in the league. And I thought that paid great dividends for him last year in the Vikings. And yeah, it is surprising that they're not doing that same stuff with him, because that really was his strength. He sort of like Breeze, is a much better athlete than people realize.
I've got the numbers. Kirk Cousins has the 7th most attempts from play action, and Case Keenum 21st. He's only run play action 30 times. That is to me, that's a complete failure of offensive play design and play calling to only have Case Keenum do that few times. But Kirk Cousins has incredible numbers of play action, a 124 quarterback rating. So no surprise that Cousins was great at this at Washington and executes it really well. And here he is doing it again. So tell me, Sage, why he is so good in play action, because a lot of other guys are sort of inconsistent with their numbers year to year, but he's always among the best.
Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience this football season. Tons of TVs, legendary appetizers, amazing fresh half-pound burgers, handcrafted sandwiches, and a wide variety of other pub favorites. The drink menu is awesome too. Huge selection of tap beer, handcrafted cocktails, and the best Bloody Marys in town. Seriously, these Bloodies are awesome. Try the Bacon Bloody, the Jalapeno Bloody, the Mother Mary, or just get a flight and try them all. Plus, Lucky's 13 celebrates Sunday Fun Day. Happy hour all day long on Sunday, every Sunday. Events and prize giveaways during games, too. Lucky's 13 has locations in Bloomington, Burnsville, Mendota, Plymouth, and Roseville. Having people over for the game? Call ahead to Lucky's and order some of those legendary apps, and they'll be ready to bring home when you get there. It's football time at Lucky's 13 Pubs. Find them online at luckys13pub.com. luckys13pub.com. It's the most wonderful time of the year, football time. And Lucky's 13 Pubs has you covered for the best game day experience. luckys13pub.com.
Well, again, sort of like Case with Kubiak in Houston, that's the basic, sort of the basis of Kirk Cousins' career in Washington. Kyle Shanahan, Mike Shanahan, Sean McVay was quality control. Matt LaFleur, who's the Titans offensive coordinator, he was on that staff, I believe, as the quarterback's coach. So that's how Kirk Cousins started his career. Zone, play action bootleg game, and you just do a ton of it in practice, and you get so comfortable with it. It's a huge stretch on the defense. They have to make a decision whether they're going to step up and fill the holes for the running game, or they're going to drop back and try to get underneath some of these play action and bootleg concepts. And if you can create everything to look the same amongst the backs, the offensive line, and have those things look just like the run stuff, it's really, really hard for defensive players. And a guy like Cousins, who's done it so long and so many times, it ends up being something that's really, really easy. It's very comfortable for when a quarterback hears a play action play. Usually you get better protection. Sometimes you get out of the pocket, which is nice, and you can sort of see everything. It's much, much better than hearing a play call in your head of a 7-step drop, and your left tackle is going to have a big challenge, and you're sitting there in that pocket holding on to the football. That's much more challenging.
What does the quality control coach do?
So the quality control, there's usually one or two on each side of the ball. They're basically the lowest level coach on the staff. There's between 2 and probably 4 of them. They're almost the assistants, and they do, they put the playbooks together. They break down a lot of film. They do really all sort of the dirty work. They do a lot of printouts, whether there's, new plays put in or whatever. So they're doing a lot of that grunt work that, the main coaches just aren't doing. Sometimes they're probably putting together some of the scout team, defensive looks, offensive looks, and designing those things, for the walkthrough. They're sort of the coaches behind the coaches, and they do a lot of that grunt work. In college, they would call it a basic graduate assistant. Mm-hmm. Very similar job. They're probably working the longest hours and getting paid almost nothing. So that's sort of the way to earn your way up in the league. You usually start a quality control coach, and hopefully at some point you end up actually with your own position. You earn it for so many years with an organization, or maybe the quarterback's coach who you got along with really well as a quality control moves on to another team to be the offensive coordinator. Mm-hmm. Maybe he hires you up to be the running backs coach or tight ends coach. That's usually sort of how the process works. But you almost always start with quality control.
I just, you hear it all the time that a guy started as quality control, and I've never actually heard anyone define what they do. And also, I'm curious, who the hell came up with quality control? Like, that's the most football thing ever. To be like, what are we going to call this guy? Like, call him the gopher? The grunt guy? Now let's
he pretty much
football.
Is. Well, he's the assistant's assistant, and I think that's it's almost like you don't even want to give them the title of coach because they haven't earned it yet. So I think they go with quality control as sort of a rite of passage before you could actually be called an assistant coach. But really, they are just assistant coaches. They just do have they do have to do a lot of that grunt work.
All right, let's go back to relevant football things. The Vikings defense finally looked like the Vikings defense, but I would also say, Sage, in that game that the Eagles moved the ball pretty consistently and then just fumbled it into Linval Joseph's hands and then fumbled it into Eric Kendrick's hands. And I wondered how much different we would look at that game if those two drives didn't end up with fumbles. Even if the Vikings had come out with wins, we looked at the defense as, oh yes, this looks more like the 2017 defense. But when I've been going back through the game, there were actually a lot of plays that the Eagles were having success with, except for just those 2 turnovers got in their way. What was your takeaway?
Well, yeah, as I went back through that game as well, I was like, the Eagles in some ways outplayed the Vikings in that game. They seemed like they moved the ball consistently. They made a lot of plays. And then they would just sort of like make key mistakes. I remember there was a couple times that they had like second short. Then they'd have like an illegal formation with a receiver covering up the tight end. That's just sort of a dumb mistake. I believe that happened twice. So you go from 2nd 2 to 2nd 7. Now, that play call is very different. 2nd 2, you can be aggressive. 2nd 7, you're just trying to sort of stay on course. And so, they made a lot of mistakes in that game. They really shot themselves in the foot. The Vikings, you could say, definitely won the game. But in some ways, the Eagles went out and they sort of lost it. It was one of those deals where they did not play their best football. The Vikings did play really good football, and they, sort of handed the Vikings a win in that game, which is a little concerning because, as I said, I thought the Vikings played pretty dang well. The Eagles did not, and yet it was still a very close ball game.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I wrote about with the running game with the Vikings and how they don't have one. And where it really hurts them is not being able to just kill the game when they're up. Like, if you have a running game that averages 5 yards a carry and you're up by 14 points at some point in the game, you could just pound their faces in and run the clock out, and the Vikings can't really do that. So it feels like even if you go through game to game, that even when they've had leads, they don't feel really safe. Like, I mean, you go back to San Francisco and they get a lead, but they couldn't really just step on San Francisco's throat, and Jimmy Garoppolo has the ball with a chance to go down and win the game. He didn't, or tie the game, and he didn't. But the same thing goes here, where they just kept leaving the door open for Philadelphia, and the Eagles almost took advantage of that. So when you look forward here, okay, it's Arizona next. You should beat Arizona. But coming up on the schedule, you're going to have some really good quarterbacks who you cannot leave the door open to win games, because they will.
Yeah, that is one issue they have. That's why every offensive coach, every head coach, the first press conference they ever have, every one of them says, we want to run the football. That's important to us, because they know when it becomes the end of the game, the last 5 minutes, the last 7 minutes, if you're up by a touchdown, to be able to run out the clock, to be able to, get 3 or 4 first downs by sort of running the ball, keeping it out of the air and keeping out of that risk of an interception and incompletion, stopping the clock. If you can run the football, it's a huge advantage, and the Vikings don't have that right now. So, they have to sort of take some risks, and it's dangerous throwing the football at the end of the game. Defenses are just looking to jump on something, and if you could run the football, that would be an advantageous thing to do. So that would be probably of all the things that's happened this year so far. The defense hasn't played great. The passing game has been phenomenal. The running game is probably the thing that needs the most improvement.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And they should do better when they're not facing the Rams and Eagles. And those are the elite defensive lines of the league, probably the two best that you have to face in back-to-back games. And now you play teams like Arizona. You've got Detroit coming up. Chicago will certainly be a challenge, but not everyone is those teams. I had another question for you based on a stat. With Kirk Cousins, he has been incredible over the last 3 years against the blitz. Tell me about being good against the blitz. Where does that start?
I think it starts with preparation. It starts with understanding all the blitzes and seeing them all, and understanding, where to go with the football when teams do pressure. Even if you're picked up protection-wise, that they blitz the Sam linebacker, your running back, has the Sam. If you're smart and you can anticipate and you understand how defenses and offenses work, you can get through your progressions faster and get to the guy who, does have that one-on-one matchup and sort of the best guy to get the ball to as quickly as possible. So that all, beating the blitz to me is all about preparation, all about understanding what your quickest throws are, and trying to find that one-on-one matchup as soon as possible.
What's the hardest blitz to pick up or to read at the line of scrimmage?
I've always felt that for me when teams are in 3-down looks, because mentally a lot of times teams play 4-down defenses. So the line 4-down and one of the linebackers, some designated linebacker based off of the type of protection that you've asked. And the hard parts are when they go 3-down, the line has 2 different linebackers. Which linebackers are they? So I think that's where it gets confusing when teams overload you with the 3-down looks.
Well, I guess that would make sense for why Wade Phillips and Rex Ryan both use 3-4.
Yeah. And again, it gives you advantage. Do you slide the line, or do you have the line a lot of times sort of dual fan on both sides and leave the center by himself one-on-one with the nose tackle? So it's sort of a little bit game within the game. But as a quarterback, just numbers-wise, it always was a little bit easier for me in the 4-down looks.
I got blocked by Wade Phillips on Twitter.
Well, what'd you do?
Nothing. I mean, I was watching the Broncos 1991 NFL Films yearbook on YouTube, because why wouldn't I be? And I noticed there are a couple of Wade Phillips clips that are amazing. There's one of him jogging in slow motion. Young Wade Phillips, but he's still Wade Phillips, and he's jogging in slow motion. So I screen grabbed it. And then there's another one where he's wearing an amazing Christmas sweater, and he's going through a drill with his players, and he does a little, shoulder juke move. And so I thought, oh, Wade Phillips, he's got a really good sense of humor and stuff, so I'll just tweet these and tag him and be like, hey, Wade Phillips had juke moves back in the day. And he blocked me. I thought he would find it funny.
I think he just didn't want anyone to see those pictures is all that was. So he is, by the way, one of the few coaches in pro football you see on Twitter who makes occasional comments, which I really appreciate.
I know, that's the thing, is he's hilarious. He was talking about like Aqib Talib arguing with Marcus Peters over something, and he will make fun of himself. So I thought, oh, this is right up Wade's alley. But him blocking me doesn't mean that everyone else can't still enjoy those GIFs, and they are hilarious. So you can check them out. But I'm like, Wade, I liked you, man. Come on.
What did you do? Well, you gotta try to figure out a way to get unblocked. I don't think that's gonna happen.
No. Are you blocked by anyone famous on Twitter?
Not that I know of. I hope so, but not that I know of.
All right. Well, let's talk again then soon, very soon, actually. And we will brainstorm on a great journeyman quarterback of the week. We got a great response to Coy Detmer. I got to say, Coy Detmer set the bar pretty darn high for journeyman quarterbacks.
So, and the Vikings have the Cardinals this week. Is that correct?
That is just like, how do we choose?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. Well, all the teams have a lot to choose from. That's sort of the thing. So we'll have to come up with a good Cardinals journeyman quarterback.
All right, sounds good. Well, I'll talk to you again soon, Sage, and talk to all you folks again on Purple Live. If you didn't know that we are doing an over-the-air version of the Purple Podcast every Tuesday night on 1500 ESPN from 5 to 7, so make sure you are tuning into that, and we will talk to you again soon here on the Purple Podcast.
I'm Rita Foley with an AP News Minute. An apology from President Trump on behalf of the nation, and Brett Kavanaugh prepares to take his seat this morning on the Supreme Court.
Those who step forward to serve our country deserve a fair and dignified evaluation, not a campaign of political and personal destruction based on lies and deception.
The president said Kavanaugh has been proven innocent of sexual misconduct allegations. Kavanaugh is promising to be a groundbreaking justice.
I'm proud that all 4 of my newly hired law clerks at the Supreme Court are women, a first in the history of the Supreme Court.
Michael is now a Category 2 storm approaching the Florida Panhandle, expected to make landfall tomorrow. Governor Scott.
Hurricane Michael is forecast to be the most destructive storm to hit the Florida Panhandle in decades.
35 Florida counties are now under a state of emergency. I'm Rita Foley.